Hello everyone. In this video, I would like to talk about one of the new recent series slash movies that just came out in Netflix. And I feel like even though this is like realistic, this is a real life story type of movie slash series, Netflix as usual been hitting the ballpark real good. But in this one, I feel that for anyone, especially if you a brother or sister, I feel like it's going to hit your feels real hard, and it's going to make you have like mixed feelings of sadness and anger to just also you as a whole, making it feel like, after you finish the whole series slash movie, it feels like you're going to feel like you just ate like a real dark chocolate candy bar. I'm not just saying that just to be funny or just say that as a play on words. I'm being serious, y'all. This was like a dark chocolate type of movie. But long story short, if I had to broadly say the beginning before I get deep into my explanation of the movie and point out a few things about the movie slash series itself, I would like to say that honestly, if I had to point out the four parts of the movie slash series, it would be just the first three parts. I would like to say that it's an in between of mainly anger, sadness, to also just a little smidget of hope and optimism. And I guess that's how, in a way, they finish strong in the fourth part, the fourth and final part, where it's a mixture of the same consistency of the first three parts. Because, long story short, and this is where I will feel like I'll have to get into my explanation slash like thoughts and review of the movie slash series. It would be just the fact that, and I'm going to have to talk about a little bit of on my personal life a little bit. Not too much, locker room talk or dirty laundry, but more or less, stuff that I got into when it comes to my academics, because I am a college student. So yeah, I've taken my own fair share of history courses, whether it be talking about all of racism of history to even just talking about recently now the how to say this, the modern times of like, hard the hardness and just honestly the hardships of our people, whether it be brother, sister, etc., and all of our minority group as a whole when it comes to black people and unity. Now, where I had to talk about when it comes to my, like, I'm not going to sound like no egghead or nobody that's pompous or anything. I'm just going to point out what I studied slash what I've read when it comes to me learning, modern history of, black of our black people. It'll be just, I read this book. It was called New Jim Crow. Long story short, the movie makes me feel like it's me reviewing my book all over again, because long story short, if I had to, vocally talk about the book, it's basically the mirror image of my book. Because long story short, in the New Jim Crow, it talks about all the messed up like oppression phases in like black people's lives, and how, in a sense, Jim Crow, whether it's old Jim Crow laws or new Jim Crow laws, it always keep black people or us down in society or in the system. Sadly, it's an unfair and unjust system. Even in the movie, in a funny, messed up way, in a sense, they keep on repeating the word fair. And even if when you watch the movie, Netflix movie on Netflix, and you turn on like the subtitles on, where when when people talk and you can read what they say while you hearing what they say, the woman, one of the main characters who were, what's the word, who were accused of basically raping this one woman that was a jogger in this one park. The mom of like this dude, she's saying fair, and when you see the subtitle, in the subtitle, when she says fair, there's like a question mark right next to it. That's where I had to say, honestly, again, the system just is not fair and unjust many times. Even in the movie, I've seen that a lot. I guess like one of the characters that I have the most just apprehensive or salt thrown towards would be just one of the main investigator women who talk about this case. Yes, I can kind of understand at least 10 or 20, at least maybe about like at least 10 or 20 or 50%, 15 per not 50, but 15% of the title where she come from with her logic of her saying that she the police and her need to be extreme and just arrest whoever is a suspect in the whole incident, but just so they can try to capture the convict. But my biggest problem is just the fact of how she was doing it in her words of choice, and why I have shade with her words of choice. For one, she keeps on calling all the people who were capable of getting arrested, which may I dare say they were all black and one Hispanic dude, got all arrested from this one park, only because there was one white woman that was a jogger, and she was found just a dead, well, at first an unconscious body, and was seen, looked like she was raped. Again, she had some what's the word? She had some purpose and some like reasons to be very vigilant in her job, but at the same time, it was the way that she was doing it and the way she was carrying it was heartless and messed up. And I feel like very first, I'm going to title her as the first investigator. The first investigator, I feel like she's the problem when it comes she's one of the people that's the problem in like American society, where you're not doing your job right, or you're not doing it correctly. Even in the movie slash in the short series, the media itself points out that if the cops did their jobs right, or if basically the people who are in charge and are responsible to create due process, the justly due process when it comes to dealing with convicts or suspects, they they could have found a convict correctly, but no, they never couldn't find a convict correctly until it was like the very last part of the four-part movie slash series. But aside from that, if I gotta point out her terminology that she like states in the movie, it'll be just terminology like those animals or those pack of kids, to honestly just different terminology such as that. I feel like it's it's reminiscent of again yet again old Jim Crow mixed with new Jim Crow, because long story short, old Jim Crow was more or less mainly more and just consolidatedly there, that racism was visibly there. It was out there. It was always out there. It was out in the open. It was more blunt back when it comes to old Jim Crow. New Jim Crow, which my book talks about, it more subjugates itself and more and is more intertwined with the American system when it comes to due process and justice system itself. Like it's more intertwined with that. If that and again, if someone tries to say that I'm not telling the truth or there's something wrong with me, all I gotta say is this: if that were the case, then when you watch this movie slash series, it wouldn't be the fact that they had like multiple of like basically black teenagers or black kids and one, I'm assuming one Hispanic kid because there was one Hispanic when they narrowed it down to 5 convicts in the movie slash series. It's just there's 4 black kids and one a Hispanic kid out the whole like various of kids that they arrested in the park when they was from the park and etc. Where the jogger was was like jogging and whatever and found unconscious and raped. Now, if I gotta talk about some anything else, it would be about this. It would be just the fact that when it comes to my book again, long story short, it's my book is kind of like a mirror image towards this movie slash series itself because by the end of the day, like I said a few minutes ago, old Jim Crow, when it comes to racism, it was very much out there and in your face, versus now it's more intertwined with the justice system and has more prejudice to also favor, may I dare say, even favoritism when it comes to stuff like this. Even in the movie slash miniseries, some of like basically the second I guess the prosecutor or like one of the people who was working with this first investigator, which I still call her a messed up, pardon my language, but a messed up bitch for her, you know, accusing like these innocent these innocent kids and taking away their childhood and taking away their time that they can't take back in prisons. Not just a prison. Prison is bad enough, especially since it's like adult prison. But it's just the fact that they didn't even put him in juvie. They just put him in just straight up prison after this. But these are like kids that are between like 14 to 16 years old. I feel like you have to put somebody in juvie or I'm not trying to say that you should excuse certain like felons or certain like people who break certain laws, but by the end of the day, I feel like you should at least put them in juvie or rehabilitate them in different ways than you just putting them straight up in an adult prison. But I don't know. This was in the movie, according to the movie, it was due in like 1989 when this whole like event slash whole yeah, this whole event in general just occurred. This whole event when the whole event occurred, it was in 18 not well not 18, but it was 1989. So long story short, things could have been real different. So I guess that's why they were putting an adult person, but I still feel like it was still wrong that that really happened to him, especially when it's fact that when you look into like the as the movie slash series goes on, you can see, you can purely see when it comes to like these 5 kids and their parents when they try to get their lawyers and attorneys out there in the courtroom trying to fight for their rights to be free and not be guilty. Every lawyer, which I like every lawyer because they were smart, they were astute, and on top of that, they were actually men who honestly were on the right side of the law, where they saying like, look, even though they playing shady and they playing hardball, these police, these people who work in the police, especially these police investigators, by the end of the day, if we kind of like play our cards right with saying certain statements and also just playing by the rules, by every step of the way, but only our way and only the right way at the same time by the book, we can still win this whole case. And that's what I liked about it. Another thing I liked about it would be just the fact that one of the lawyers slash attorneys, which I feel like he was Hispanic or by looks of him, he was either Hispanic or was black. I feel like he was Hispanic by the looks of him a little bit, but it's just the fact that dude dude was on the ball and was on point when he had a whole map where of like this whole park where this whole event happened, and he pointed out the fact that with this one police officer or police chief, he pointed out the fact that so when your men wrote up like reports about this whole event happening with the jogger, your boy said that the event happened in this area, but not in that area. And I'm like, this dude's on point. Because here's the thing, and I gotta have to hype this up a little bit. How can you say this event happened in one point and try to say that these boys are guilty, but then when somebody is on the ball and actually doing their homework right, they look into the crime scene and they see that the real like what's the word? The real crime scene happened like 5 miles away or 5 or 20 meters away from like the real crime scene. That's sloppy, fam. That is ugly, disgusting, and sloppy. And you know that these people that are accusing like these boys of doing something wrong were just plain straight up lying. And another thing I have to point out is just they were they were being shady with theirs when it comes to like even interrogating them. Even when the moms out the five kids were pointing out that so you were interrogating my son without a guardian or said parent there in a room full of like different adult policemen like interrogating him. You had no minor, he had no minor, what's the, no lawyer and no attorney when it comes to this interrogation. And she just shook her head. And yet again, y'all, this was the first investigator woman that I had most shade towards. She let all this happen and she wanted all this to happen. And that's no reason why I just cannot stand her. It's just the fact of she did that. She ignored like basically some parts of the law where many parts of the law or some parts of the law where there is the legit just judicial true due process where they are inclined to certain things for this type of case. I do not care whether you're dealing with a suspect or anything else. Depending on if the suspect is like an adolescent or someone that's really young, by the end of the day, they do have the right to have certain luxuries on their side of the lease because by the end of the day, that's fairness. Even though in the movie it questioned fairness, that is fairness. Now, aside from that, that's overall when it comes to the the overall case itself. That's between part one and part two. That's what happens between these five. They make a good point. They make good points. Heck, even if I had to say one more thing about part one and two, it's just also the fact that even one other lawyer, when they pulling out like all the people that were, like just basically eyewitnesses or people who just were involved in this whole situation in the park, it's the fact that many people kept saying in the courtroom, out of all five of these kids, none of them technically did nothing wrong. None of them didn't do nothing wrong. They did not hurt a soul, nor did not even like rape no one or anything else. They were all innocent. Every last person that was a witness or was involved, they were saying that, nah, these dudes are clean. And that's another thing where I had to point out that these cops, and even especially the first main investigator, were just shady and lying. Even when like this investigator went back to the woman that was trying to help this investigator out, she was trying to make one of her first attempts was she was trying to make it look like when they was doing like reports towards these 5 kids, she was saying that, well, we could like try and make all these reports that we made them say these certain statements, like blame one person and blame the other, where basically this person did this and this person did that. Basically, long story short, the woman was trying to make all of them say that all of them together raped this woman. All she needed was just one of them to say a concrete statement to where everything can make sense and line up. And that's, again, like I said, this woman was fucked up. This woman was messed up, and she was wrong for what she was doing. And that's why I cannot fade her, cannot stand this woman for what she was doing. But that's part 1 and 2. Two sad. If I had to talk about 2 climax, it'll be just sadly, the due process failed. Say it sadly, and they were all 5 of them were put in prison. And if I had to say something about part 2, it'll be just, well, what my shirt besides the X-Men. Word slash R.I.P. Malcolm X, and also word to Malcolm, and also word to my boy Magneto. It's just the fact of my top says that, long story short, this America we live in is rooted in hatred and racism, and that's how I felt. That's what I felt in this movie slash miniseries. It was just a whole lot of racism and just hatred when it comes to going through the due process. And again, the movie feels like it's a mirror image when it comes to the whole new Jim Crow book. And honestly, if I had to say one other thing about me comparing my book to this movie slash like mini series, it would be just the fact that my book also talks about like this one, basically back then when you had this whole like drug war situation, and the book really points out that it was because J.F. Kennedy was so involved and had his hands dirty in the situation where he honestly flew into drugs, and he somehow like had like personnel transport drugs into the US and make it look and put it into like black communities and make it look like black people possess these drugs and whatever, and just that's how the drug war got created. And even in my book it points that out a lot. Now, why I bring up Jay, why I bring up Kennedy into this situation, it would be just the fact that, honestly, in the movie, you had Trump, younger version Donald Trump, 1989 Donald Trump, saying some statements. Even a black sister in the movie was pointing out, if you're not racist, or is this not like a racial thing, the why Trump says something and is a part of it. Now, aside from me talking about younger Trump version, let's all be honest here, y'all. Trump is currently president, and I'm just going to say this. He's not making some wise choices nor decisions. And on top of that, most of America did not want him as president. It just happened. But aside from all that, yeah, that's part 2. Part 3, part three, it's another comparison to my book of New Jim Crow, where honestly, all five of them did time in prison, and after they did time in prison, they basically was let out with probation or was overall free after doing time. And sadly, part three is sad and but like an intertwinedness of sadness and just anger. The only reason why I say those two two statements is because one well, in my Jim Crow book, it talks about like the fact that when someone is in prison and just basically accused, just wrongfully accused, it's just the fact of when you're in prison and you have a criminal record. By the end of the day, it's hard for you to find something respectable or infamous when it comes to trying to work somewhere when it's trying to work somewhere good, like whether it being well, if I had to quote like Corey's sister, which was one of the five like victims of this wrongfully accused event. Corey's sister slash brother said the statement that honestly, if you want to be a teacher, a policeman, or any of those things in society, you're going to have to, go through school and etc. Well, in my Jim Crow book, sadly, when you're after you have a criminal record, it's hard for you to obtain those things because in society they will welcome you in, but they're not going to fully welcome you in when it comes to benefits or trying to find an infamous job that's very respectable and have a whole lot of money. You could probably have like part-time jobs or full-time jobs inside a part-time job. A full-time job slash inside a part-time job like McDonald's or Starbucks and etc. I'm not trying to talk trash about those industries. I'm just saying as examples. Yes, you can have those type of jobs in a better standing, but sadly, it's just hard for you to get like a better job than that or do better in your life if you want to do better than that in your life. It's just going to be hard after you have a criminal record with your name. And they put more like nails in a coffin slash more emphasis of this when every person, all five of them in general, when they were just trying to live their everyday life overall, every one of them just honestly was going through like just basically harmful accusations and finger pointing from other people. Like a good example would be when it comes to Hispanic dude, when he went back to his home with his father until he got back on his feet fully, so like in a sorrowful way, like the father's new like wife sadly points out that he's a convict and he's a rapist after being wrongfully accused of something that he did not do. And he just kept on going through it. And same thing happened with one of the brothers that was with this one like pretty sister, this one pretty sister of a girlfriend that he has. Sadly, besides the sister wanting to go out somewhere as usual, honestly, in that moment, it's just the fact that when they got into a whole argument, the sister was being petty and pulled up the fact that dude was a rapist or did something wrong when it's just fact that he didn't do nothing wrong and he didn't rape anyone when it comes to like the park when it comes to the park event. And sadly, that's exactly what my Jim Crow book was talking about when it comes to, you know, incarceration after incarceration or after having a criminal record. Sadly, if people know that you have a criminal record or you were a past felon one way or the other, it's hard for you to do things, and it's also in a sense kind of hard for some or most of society to fully accept you. They'll accept you as a person, but they won't fully accept you as a citizen. And in a sense, I guess that's how old Jim Crow, new Jim Crow fully works in a sense. It's just basically putting like minority groups down and minority people just down, sadly, in the system where they can't fully succeed or they can't fully live their lives like in a great optimistical way. Now, fourth part, fourth part, I'm just going to try to be real quick and try to be broad about it. Fourth part, I would like to say it more, or it's mainly just talks about Corey and like his whole experience in jail and honestly his hardships in jail and his hardships of life as well. Because long story short, Corey, long story short, was just the one who was steadfast and just refused to go by what the law was trying to make him to do, which was trying to make him admit that he did something wrong when he didn't do anything wrong. He knew that he didn't do anything wrong, and he stood by that. And long story short, it paid off, and honestly, everybody like persevered after the whole event when holding out because the real convict just snitched on himself when it comes to like when investigators from the past case, and he just spilled the beans and spilled his guts out saying that he was the one who did it, and he had a realization that I'm ready to pay for my wrongdoings, and honestly I'm ready to pay for my wrongdoings because I don't want anybody else to pay for my wrongs. And he fully acknowledged that, especially fully acknowledges the fact that Corey was one of the five people that was strongly affected by him and his, like mistake slash wrongdoing. And that's why he snitched on himself and why he had the resolve to say something to this investigator. Now, if I gotta say something though, and I'm going to call this one investigator number two just to be easy and disconvenient with this whole review. And I'm sorry for it being too long, y'all, but I just gotta be real thick about this and say my pettiness when it comes to certain statements. When it comes to the investigator number two, it would be just the fact of I love investigator number two because she had a whole lot of heart and passion the right way when it comes to this whole like situation slash event. She actually, well, aside from like having the real convict say what really happened, she was more earnest and more honest on how she was trying to find out the truth and trying to apprehend who really did like this whole like case and this whole like wrongful event that happened in 1898. I mean 1998. And she was successful by the grace of God. She was very successful. But my biggest thing about her, why I love her so much, is the fact that, ooh, if I gotta say one other thing about the movie, and I had to say something about part one and calling back part one and two, it was full of clapbacks. And the only reason why I say clapbacks, I'm sorry that sounds childish, but it was clapbacks of facts to just propaganda and lies and stories. Even in the movie slash series slash mini series, one of the brothers that were fighting for like the five kids that were wrongfully accused of this unlawful act, the brother said, "We're here to come to court today, where we're not here to listen to stories, but we're here to listen to facts." And that's what the second investigator came up with. She came up with facts, not stories or lies. She came up with facts. It was by the grace of God, but she came up with facts and she did not try to make up anything. Like unlike the first investigator. Now, the biggest clapback I would like to say would be just aside from her pointing out that the first like investigator like wrongfully accused these 5 kids of doing something wrong and made them sit in prison for about 12 years or so of unlawful time that they did not do. It's just the fact that she pulled out like big guns, looking like looking real educated and pulling out the big guns saying, so you've been in your house or you've been chilling with your life for that 12 years. And all you did with those 12 years is you've been chilling your life and you wrote 4 books. Now, the biggest thing, I can't remember all the titles of the 4 books that she written out those 12 years, but the biggest thing that I like to say when it comes to my pettiness would be just the 4th book, which would be Dead House. Now, the only reason why I had to point out Dead House is because the second investigator brings out the fact that do you feel guilty or feel bad that you unlawfully accused 5 kids of doing something wrong and put them away for 12 years for no reason? And she's like, no, I still sleep well. And again, the second investigator pointed out that you one of your 4 books, you've written a book called The Dead House. And my thing is about bringing up The Dead House is the symbolism of the title Dead House. Honestly, when it comes to like certain, I guess, old sayings, it would be just a human body is their temple and their house. By the end of the day, she points out the fact that you not only unlawfully put these 5 kids away, but you also created like propaganda and lies to help them put them away and made them look like they were guilty to, to make them go in prison for 12 years with not just prison, but adult prison. How does that make you feel? And she still says that I still sleep well and I'm going to sleep well after this lunch. I'm like, you son of a bitch. You son of... Oof. That's why I could not stand that first investigator because of what she was doing and what unlawful thing that she did in this whole situation. Long story short, the 5 kids / men won after growing up and after going through trial and tribulation with everything that happened, and God blessed them. God blessed them with a whole clean slate after the real convict admittedly said what his unlawful thing that he'd done back in that case. Now, the second biggest thing I like to say is, and this is like me calling back to like the movie / miniseries talking about that if the prosecutors did their job right, or the police did their job right, to the investigators did their job right, they would have found and apprehended the real convict versus having five kids that were unlawfully accused of doing an unlawful act put in prison. They could have found a real convict instead of like putting men / these boys back in the day in prisons for so long. Not only that, but also create their own type of person in their own life in general. And even the media points that out when saying the statements that jail time destroyed their lives in a sense. And it technically did, if you think about it. But long story short, if I had to say something about this movie, I would give it a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. If you like, like Black history, to also just deep movies like this. And also, if you like my review and thoughts, please leave a like. If you enjoy my other videos, please subscribe. Thank you. Bye.